Hey, are you somebody that has a really tough time sitting for long periods of time because your hips feel tight? This video is just for you. Come join me. Hi, I'm Lauren Irk. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Make sure that you are subscribed to this channel, and also just to make sure that you never miss another video, don't forget to click your indications below. In today's video, I'd like to talk with you a little bit first about hips and then take you through a nice little flow that'll really help you to get a little more flexibility. Now, there is this idea in the yoga world, maybe you've heard it, where people say, I really want to do hip openers today. But in reality, hips don't really open. Hips are designed to be very weight-bearing joint, and they really support quite a lot when you consider the weight of the torso and the floor pushing up into our legs and the hips being kind of right in the middle. It's a very complex, multiplanar joint that when we feel a lot of tightness around, many times it's because our body's gotten used to whatever positions and motions that it's been used to being in, and we've just simply adapted to it. Now, there's all kinds of reasons that somebody's going to have more range of motion than their hips and the other in terms of anatomy. The ball of the femur, the neck of the femur, the orientation of the hip joint, your genetics, your cartilage, your wear and tear over time, how your muscles are able to fire. But we want to try to think about where we are today. So let's just start today by sitting in some sort of a comfortable position. Now, for a lot of people, sitting on the floor is not at all comfortable. And if you're somebody that's sitting there like this, I definitely understand. So if this is not comfortable, certainly you can sit with your legs straight out in front of you, and maybe for this portion of the video, you might want to sit in a chair. But what I'd like to suggest is maybe grabbing a Mexican cotton blanket. You can also get any kind of blanket in your house. I really like these because they're cool and they're not quite so bulky. But I'm going to take this particular blanket, and I'm just going to fold it in half a second time. I've started in a rectangle, and then I'm moving it in half. So when I do have that thickness, it actually brings me off the floor a little bit, so that when I now bring it behind me, my hip joint doesn't have to bend quite as much. Now, when I'm sitting in this posture, I'm sitting in Sukhasana here. I may decide that one of my legs feels a little more uncomfortable. So that might behoove me to maybe move my feet a little further away from me. Now I'm going to use these yoga blocks. And again, if you're interested in the yoga blocks or in the Mexican blanket, we have a link below. They'll take you directly to Amazon and you can purchase one. But I'm going to take this under my legs. Let's say that I was way up here. Then I'm going to take my blocks and I may put them really close to my hips and support me. The moment that my muscles feel input, that block represents a force, and when it pushes into my leg, muscles into my leg know how to fight that and push in, and over time, as they get stronger, I may get more range of motion. Now, without the blocks here, all I feel is gravity pushing me down, and I might actually tighten up more to protect myself, so that's something to keep in mind. So as I sit in Sukhasana, let's try to focus in on being balanced from right hip to left. We're going to pull up at the base of the spine and tighten into the belly, bringing the shoulder blades back. Now, either with your blocks or with your hands, either one, press your knees down. Okay, so if I was using blocks, I might have them here. I'm going to very gently press my legs down to the block, and I'm feeling a lot of feedback in the sides of my hips. My hip joint is in external rotation and abduction, which a lot of people think of as open, right? So now I want to invite you to another pose. This is called Baddha Konasana, which means the bound angle, the cobbler's pose. So if you're able to move your hips further apart, let's see if we can now separate the legs just a little more. And now as we bring our feet together, we press the bottoms of the feet, and you can see that this pose is really hard for me. So I'm going to take my blocks and place them here. Now, having done ballet for 14 years and practiced yoga and fitness for nearly 40 now, I'm going to definitively say that my hip joints are pretty much, this is as far as they're going to go. So I'm going to feel comfortable by pressing my legs into the blocks. This is just my anatomy. This is where I am currently able to move, and so I want to make this pose feel strong and stable. When I press down, I don't feel shaking. I feel strong. I can sit up straight. I'm not rounding my back. I'm not straining anywhere. And even if I took my hands away, I could sit here comfortably. So I'm just very gently moving my legs into my blocks, taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. So let's try that one more time. Deep breath in. Good. Deep breath out. And now I want you to take your legs and simply adduct the hips as we bring them together. All right. Now, I want to turn to my side now. I'm going to take this blanket and move it off to the side. Now, as I start to lower down on my back, I'm going to change my muscular participation and I'm going to move more into my gluteals. So as we lower down onto the back, we bring our arms down by our sides and let's just practice moving those hips towards the ceiling. This is a great pose to strengthen muscles that extend the hips, the gluteal muscles, and these are also very strong external rotators. So I want you to pull your heels back towards your shoulders and really start to fire up both those glutes as well as your hamstrings. Just holding that there for a moment, pressing your shoulders into the ground and lifting your chin. Keep that little dome space across your chest. And then as you exhale, let's simply lower that now down towards the mat. So from there, I want to see how I do with one leg. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have tried this before, and it's called the figure 4 stretch. And if you've ever had any sciatic pain, people do this all the time. Let's try something a little different. I want you to flex into your knee, so we're drawing that in. And now I'm just going to, from the shaft of my femur, I want you to try externally rotating your hip. And just notice how far you move. Bring it back to the center, and then lower it down. Let's do the same thing on the other side. Lifting that foot up to a 90-degree angle. I want you to externally rotate through that hip so that your knee is stacking right above the line of the hip and hold. Bring it back to the center and then lower that right back down towards the floor. Nice. Now this time as we bring that leg up and we externally rotate, I want you to notice, are you able to actually sit that foot comfortably on the other knee? So for me, this is about the end of my range. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to either use my hand or even a block. And I'm going to comfortably place that here or here. And I'm just going to press my knee out into my hand. And what that's going to do is it's going to help me to strengthen this side of my hip as I come into that pose. Holding that here. Now, I want to try to maintain this. And now as I start to tighten up into the belly, I'm now going to pick up my other hip. Now, as this leg starts to move more towards my chest, I'm starting to feel that pull. So I'm going to push this leg forward into my leg that's pulling in, and the leg that's pulling in is pulling against the top leg. So you're basically doing a tug of war. As the bottom leg pulls towards you, the top leg pulls away from you. Then I'm going to take my hands behind my head and add a crunching motion. Now from here, I want to invite you to, again, move your hand into the back of that leg as your bottom knee pulls in, and we're still strengthening that whole hip complex. And then exhale, lower that down. Now let's take this with us as we pull into the pose, bridge. Coming back into our hip position, inhale, breath. Good, and then as we exhale, let's lower that down towards the floor. So now as we take both of our knees now into our chest, let's take an inhale breath, and then rock ourselves up now into sitting. So now as we come back into our position, let's now extend our knees straight. Now when we come into that position, I want you to now take both of your legs and separate them. So this is bilateral hip abduction. If you feel like you need, again, that blanket up underneath you, you can easily sit yourself up and you can see immediately the angle of my hip is a little bit more than where it was. Place your hands on the outsides of your legs and gently move your legs back into the hands so that we can start to strengthen the outer hips. Taking a deep breath in. Good. And a deep breath out. Nice. Now, as we take those legs back together again, let's take an inhale breath. Good. And then as you exhale, flexing your knees, let's come forward. Now, I'm going to turn the other way so that you can see the other side. So now as we start to come down, let's flex into our shoulders, coming down into the floor. And let's take our opposite leg now, flexing from the knee and hip, drawing it in, externally rotating from that hip. And you can see I have enough space now to place that foot right up on top of my other leg. Rocking the shoulder blades underneath me again, I'm going to place my hand somewhere on the outside of this leg. Or again, if you'd like, you could use a block if maybe you're having a hard time sensing anything. And just start to perform hip abduction as you move it away. Keeping that tension now, start to pick up your bottom leg. And now the bottom leg is going to be fighting that top leg as we push against each other. Start to add flexion of the torso if it's comfortable. And now it's even closer in. Pulling against the foot, pushing back against that knee, holding. And we're just trying to strengthen it. Now let's just say that over time, my leg starts to quiver. You can see the opening that my leg is making. I could actually make that opening smaller, and look what happened to my femur bone. It's not quite as abducted. It's not moving out to the side as much as it was. Lowering that down, rocking those shoulder blades underneath me again. Let's just go ahead and press those hips all the way up now towards the ceiling so we feel the line of the pelvis being more symmetrical. Inhale, breath. Good. And then as we exhale, we lower that right back down. So as we uncross the legs again, let's draw those knees up into the chest. Inhale. And then exhale, roll yourself up now into center. Now, as we come back towards the middle, let's try another pose that you see a lot of times in yoga called the pigeon. I want you to take your blocks in front of you and then roll forward onto your hands and knees. Now, as we come into our quadruped exercise, I want you to look at the space right up in between your blocks. Let's start by taking one of your knees and then just slide it up into that space. If you notice, when I slide it up, my foot sort of automatically moves to the outside of my femur. So you see a lot of people, I'll just move this block so you can see on camera, they will actually grab their foot and start pulling it this way. Now if you remember when you were looking at me on camera, I didn't have that much rotation available. So for me, if I started to move this lower leg forward, I would start to feel a lot of very awkward forces in my knee. So I'm going to go ahead and allow my leg to stay where it is. And what I'm going to do is press my shin into the floor. Now taking your back leg behind you, I want you to also press that leg into the ground and just tighten up into the glute. If it's too much on your lower back, simply flex your elbows and come down. Now one thing that you can do is you can take one of your blocks and simply place it underneath your hip as high as you need for it to be. I'm going to turn mine just a little bit, and I'm just going to sit right up against that. Or you could sit down deeper if you're a little closer to the floor, right? And if you don't want to use the blocks in front, if you can take your hands all the way to the floor from here. Instead of collapsing into this pose, I want you to think of the back leg drawing forward and the forward leg drawing back. So you're almost trying to wrinkle your mat in the middle. Tightening your abdominal muscles, take a deep breath in. And exhale. Let's remove that block. I want you to sit down now onto your back hip. Move your back leg up off the ground. And I'm going to give you a couple of choices. Number one, I could bring my foot on the inside. Number two, I could straighten this knee, inside or outside. Or number three, I could keep this knee bent and bring this foot onto the outside. Now that's a lot of hip motion. So let's take our hand now to the inside of this knee that's in front, the opposite hand pushing into it. Bring the same side hand behind the body. And now let's just turn and rotate towards that flexed knee. Taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out and coming right back to the center. So now as we unravel the pose, let's come back into all fours. Good. And if you feel more comfortable again with your hands on blocks, go ahead and do that. Now let's change sides. Let's take the opposite leg and bring it in front. Now we may notice that one side is a little different than the other today, and that's okay. Once again, let's think of drawing those legs together and really tightening the gluteal muscles along that back leg. If you need to, feel free to place that block underneath you so that you feel like you have a little bit of support, or you could just try to maintain it yourself. Good. And then as you do this, pulling yourself forward and back again, let's think of a long line coming through the spine as we reach out in front of the body. Inhale. Good. And then when you exhale, I want you to simply sit down on this back hip and take your back leg up and around. So again, I have a lot of options here. I could place this foot here. If you feel like you're leaning over towards one side, maybe you want to straighten this leg and come into this position. Or maybe I want to, from here, come into the traditional position, although that doesn't really mean anything. You just have to move into whatever feels the right for you. So my opposite hand is just going to very lightly press into my knee, taking that opposite, the same side hand behind me. And then as I sit up nice and tall, let's turn and rotate, gazing back over that shoulder. Taking a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Good. On your next inhale, let's turn the gaze forward and then finally unravel the pose. Now, as we come back to our first posture that we had today, we come back into Sukhasana and we take our blocks either under the legs or not. I want you to notice how your body is feeling. One of the reasons why our hips feel open after a yoga practice is actually because the muscles that surround the hip are tightening better. When our body senses stability, mobility can follow. That's one very important principle to sort of wrap around your head. We can't be strong without being flexible, and we can't be flexible without being strong. We have to be able to control it. If you have time today, I would suggest that you try lying down on your back, taking a minute or two in relaxation, and just really absorbing the practice. Do this video for a number of months and see how your hips begin to change and how much better you feel when you're sitting during the day. Once again, thank you so much for watching. And if you like this video, make sure to give me a thumbs up. Namaste.